Good evening. Hope you're doing well. Tonight we're learning Maseches Menachos, Daf Gimel, and we're starting about 8 lines down on Gimel Amud Aleph at the words Kodshe Kodshim. There is a hekesh between the world of Zvachim and the world of Menachos, and there is a halacha that seems specific to the world of Menachos, which is that if a mincha was done shalol lishma, but the maisim are nicker, it's like super clear as to what you did. You said a machvas, but you cooked it in the way of a marcheshes in a deeper pan. So then it's pashut, obviously what you meant. So by those cases, we would say that it's not going to be puzzle. So we know that we have this leniency that where the ma'isa of our nikarin by mincha, that we would say that the mincha is not going to be puzzle. Do we have that same extension to the world of zvachim? So originally we would not have thought so, and today we're going to be spending all day on that topic. So let's get started with our first push to see if we can figure out if we have such a leniency by the world of Zvachim. We know it exists by Mincha. We just want to know about Zvachim. So Kadshe Kadshim, Sheshachtan B'tzafon. That's where they should be shechted, right? We're 8 lines down on Gimel Amud Aleph. Kadshe Kadshim Sheshachtan B'tzafon. If you have the holiest types of animals that were shechted in the north, where they should have been, but you did so L'Shem Kadshim Kalim. You did so to be a part of the world of Kachim Kalim. So you made a mistake, right? We should have said Lirtzu. We should have said that even though your intention was Kachim Kalim, we should still allow it. Why? Because Ma'asehen Mochichen Aleim de Kachim Ninu. It's clear based on your actions as to what you did. Di Kachim Kalim, if it was Kachim Kalim, Bidarom Hava Avidlahu. It's very, very clear. You're standing there with an animal that's kachim. You're doing it in the north. You do the shchita, but you say out loud, "This is for kachim kalim." So everyone looks at you. You're like, "You're not so intelligent." You're standing in the north with a kachim animal, screaming kachim kalim. L'chora, we should say it's mutter. So says the Gemara, "Amor da'amar rachmana af bedarom." Maybe the Torah would allow kachim to be done even in the south. Asks the Gemara, Bidarom velo b'tzafon miyamar. Is there such a thing where kachim are allowed to be done in the south but not in the north? After all, Ditnan, we have a Mishnah. Shchitasan b'chol makom ba'azara. We have a din like this. It should be mutar. Shchitasan b'chol makom ba'azara. So perhaps you can't learn from that Mari Makom anything about the world of Zvachim and the leniency of Ma'asehen mochichen alehem. That was question 1, asked and answered. Here's question 2. Let's talk about a similar case. Kachim kalim, sheshachtan bidarom, and you did so l'shem kachim. So you have kachim kalim. You're in the southern part of the mizbeach, past whatever the midline is. We spent a long time discussing that as to what the midline is, but you're in the southern part of the Azara, and it's kachim kalim, and you say out loud, "I'm doing this l'shem kachim." Wrong place. The halacha should be lirtu. It should be acceptable as kachim kalim. Why? Because ma'asein mochichen aleim de kachim kalim nenu. It's obvious, just geographically, where are you standing? It must be that it's kachim kalim. The kachim, but safon hava avid lahu. So says the Gemara, we should have said it's mutter. Says the Gemara, no, the chachamim would never allow that. Why would we never allow that? Because Amre, people might have said that kachim ninhu ume averhu de avar v'shachat luhu b'darom. What we're afraid of is that in this case, people will assume that you shechted kachim in the wrong place. Because even though you did kachim, you did kachim kalim, you shechted them in the south, but you did so saying out loud. What did you say out loud? Kachim, even though you're standing in the south. The concern is that people will hear your words and make a mistake and assume that you are allowed to shech kachim even in the south, and that's not true. So that's the concern here. A third of the way down on Gimel Amud Aleph. And then you're allowed to do that, and that's not true. Says the Gemara, if that's true, we should have the same concern by machvas l'shem marcheshes nami. A machvas is going to be more like a griddle, where you take a flour-based offering and you put it on a griddle, kind of like a matzah type of result. And if you do so l'shem marcheshes, so there too we should say, Hi de kamitz la marcheshes, Amar hi b'marcheshes nadar, v'hada ma'isi la b'machvas de marcheshesi. You might have thought, just like we were very concerned about someone who stood on the southern side of the Azara and screamed out, Kodshe Kachim, but he's in the wrong place. We should have the same concern by a machvas, that you just put it in the wrong pot. We're concerned that you did it in the wrong pot. Says the Gemara, no, that's not a concern because Hasam, over there, Kinami b'marcheshes nadar, even if you made a neder about a marcheshes, that deeper pan, Kimaisi la b'machvas, machvas havya. There, the halacha does in fact change. If you take your marcheshes, and you put it on a machvas, the status changes. It's not comparable to our case of kachim kalim to kachim kidditznan. We have a Mishnah that highlights this exact case, which we'll see much later in this Masechta on Daf Kuf Beis. Haomer harei alai b'machvas. A person makes a neder that they're going to bring their flour offering in a machvas on a griddle, and vehevi b'marcheshes, they brought it in a deeper pan, or b'marcheshes vehevi b'machvas, or the reverse. They made the neder of harei alai with a marcheshes, and then they brought it on a machvas. Mashe hevi hevi. Whatever you executed is what happened, not what you said. Whatever you did is what it meant. V'yad nidro lo yatsa. V'yadei nidro lo yatsa. However, while it's true you're yotze, the mincha can be eaten. However, you're not allowed, I shouldn't say you're not allowed, you're not yotze your neder. Because remember, you said, harei alai, I'm going to bring this marcheshes, and you brought a machvas. Machvas is kosher, but you're not yotze, because you said marcheshes. That's not allowed. Vidilma zu omar. Maybe he said even more than harei alai. Not committing on himself, on the gavra, but harei zu, on the flour. Totally different. And then lahavi b'machvas v'hebi b'marcheshes, and that case would be different. Why keditznan? We have another Mishnah, also that is going to be later on Daf Kuf Beis. Zu, if a person says zu, meaning this specific one, lahavi b'machvas v'hebi b'marcheshes, or reverse b'marcheshes v'hebi b'machvas, harei psula. So what do we see? That the word zu is very, very problematic. So here we see that we do have a comparison from the world of mincha. If you make a mistake with machvas and marcheshes by mincha after saying zu, that I'm going to bring this specific flour, and then you bring the marcheshes on the machvas, or the machvas on the marcheshes, that should be psula because you were overly specific. That is very similar to the kadshe kachim and kachim kalim example that we gave a little bit ago. Says the Gemara, maskim, l'rabbanan hachanami, that it would be possible. They would agree with you that that would be possible. But the Reb Shimon, we're a little bit more than halfway down. He would taka agree that it's mutter. Kevan de Amar Reb Shimon, af yedei nidro yotza. You're even yotze, you're neder. That's unbelievable. You said zu, you're holding flour in your hand. You say zu, this is going to be for a machvas, and you bring it on a marcheshes. Of course, pashat the mincha is kosher, but you're also yotze, you're neder. Alma, what do we see from here? Kviusa demana velo klumhi. That Reb Shimon is of the opinion that the utensil upon which you fry, I guess it's fry, it's going to be oil on a pan, that you fry this food, this flour, it doesn't matter. Veloshna amar zu, veloshna amar alai. The language of alai and zu are also not a non-issue. The halacha would be exactly the same. So Reb Shimon is a mekil in this case, and the Rabbanan would be a machmir. We're going to take out the words elamayata because that implies if X is true, therefore we're going to ask why, and that's not correct. We're asking this question, this is our third question of the day, for the same reason that we were asking the previous two. It's not an elamayata at all. So let's go. We're 2/3 of the way down on Gimel Amid Aleph, and says the Gemara, what about a case of Ola? You have a korban Ola, sheshachat l'shem chatas. If I have an Ola, and I shechted it with kavana, I say out loud, this Ola is a chatas. So the halacha is tirtzeh. We should say that it's absolutely kosher. Why? Dahai zachar b'hai nekeva. Because an ola is a male and a chatas is a female. So if the ola is a male, you can scream all day that this is a chatas. It's a male animal. The chatas is a female. So nothing to talk about. So it should be that ma'asav mochichos. I can see what kind of animal that is. And therefore, we should say that in a case where a person was bringing an ola and he screams from the rooftops, this is going to be a chatas, it should be that it's maratza. There should be no problem at all. Says the Gemara, no. Kevan deika seir nasi de zacharhu lo yedia. Since the seir nasi, which is in the category of a chatas, and it's a zachar. So when you say with your ola, I'm giving a chatas, perhaps you don't mean a regular chatas. Perhaps you mean the type of chatas that's actually male, which is the seir nasi. Okay, lo yedia. Omar, what if a person said l'shem chatas yachid ma'ika l'meimar? Oh, so here, if a person says with their ola l'shem chatas yachid, the female animal, it should be maratza in that case. That's first of all. And visu, and furthermore, let me ask you another case. Chatas yachid sheshachta l'shem ola tir said the reverse is also true. If I have a chatas yachid, which is a female animal for a chet that I've done, I inadvertently ate treif chas v'shalom, and then I'm bringing a chatas, and I scream from the rooftops that it's an ola. No, an ola is a zachar. So that too should be merutza. Why would we not say that these cases are merutzas? It says the Gemara, mechasya ba'alya, the genitalia of the animal, the zachrus and nag, we can't see. There's a tail, and it wasn't readily evident as to what the animal is. So it says the Gemara, and I hope there's a zoologist in the room. Which of these animals have tails? Where's my dad? He would probably know. He would probably. So it says the Gemara, Hatenach heicha da'isi kivsa. I agree. If you have a kivsa, if you have a female lamb, they do have a tail, and therefore you can't tell if it's a male or a female animal. No problem. But I see seira, if you have a female goat and there is no tail, because we all know our animals and their tails, Michael Meimar. What do you mean you can't tell what the gender is? Look at the animal. It's not difficult. You can tell, right? You can tell. You could tell. Yes, you could. You could tell. Ella says the Gemara, and I found this to be quite shocking. Bein zacharim lenekevos lav adaitaihu de inchi. Everyone's like David. Can't tell the difference between the animals. Don't know what a male is. Don't know what a female is. Nothing readily evident to them. They don't know what. So says the Gemara, because of that assertion that people don't pay attention to or are not knowledgeable about how to determine the gender of the animal. So therefore, even a person who says with their male ola, this is a chatas yachid, or vice versa, it's not merutza. Fascinating. Okay, we're 15 lines from the bottom of Gimel Amid Aleph. Says the Gemara as follows. Pesach, the Korban Pesach, sheshachtu l'shem asham. If you have a Korban Pesach and you shechted it, you screamed out, this is an asham. Wow, it's Yud Daled Nisan. It's in the afternoon. It's Bein Ha'arbayim. You're screaming out things that make no sense. Everyone's like, who's the weird guy in the back? We know what's happening. It should be Merutze because of what's happening. Dehai ben Shana, V'hai ben Shtaim. One of them is 1 year old and one of them is 2 years old. So it should be Merutze. Why would... Obviously, one is true and one is not. Just depends on the age of the animal. So it says the Gemara, no. Kevan deika asham nazir va'asham mitzora, which are also first-year animals like Pesach, lo psikale. Perhaps what they were doing was bringing an asham. Remember the case was Pesach sheshachtu l'shem asham. Which asham? If it's the asham nazir and asham mitzora, those are also first-year animals like a korban Pesach. So that then we have no idea what his kavana was. Omar, if he says l'shum asham gzelos or l'shum asham me'ilos, which are second-year animals, so you're bringing a korban pesach and you scream out l'shem asham gzelos, which is a second-year animal. So I have my first-year animal and my second-year animal. It should be readily evident that it's a korban pesach and it should be totally kosher. So it says the Gemara, Visu, and furthermore, let's double down. Asham gzelos v'asham me'ilos sheshachtan l'shum pesach lirtu. The reverse should also be true. That if I'm shechting an animal that's 2 years old and screaming from the rooftops about a korban pesach that's 1 year old, it also should be meruzah. The pesach ben shana v'hani ben shtei shanim. So we should have a ritzui. Says the Gemara, Ella, and this one I totally agree with. The bein ben shana levein ben shtei shanim labadei tar de inchi. We can't tell the difference with the birthday. You're going to know. What if they're 1 day apart? It's a tiny line in the sand. There's no way to tell. So the Gemara says that because that's the case, we cannot say a ritzui because we just don't know how old the animals are. I did a bris for a baby. He weighed what my twins weighed combined. This one baby, literally, he was 10 pounds. My son, Asher and Yaakov, together were 9 pounds. So, and I said that, I'm like, your child is two children. You can't tell. They were the same age. They were 8 days old. This kid looked like a full-grown football player. Totally not the same. So you have a goat that's bigger. There's no birthdays. We have no idea. We did discuss somewhere in Shas actually that their birthdays are down to the hour, which was an interesting halacha that we came across back in the day. Fine. Me'es le'es, from the hour that it's born to that day a year later, that's their birthday for when they go from a ben shana to ben shtei shana. So that's what the Gemara says is lav atayu de inchi. The ika ben shana de michsi ki ben shtaim. There are 1-year-olds that look like they're two. The ika ben shtaim de michsi ki ben shana, and they're 2-year-olds that look like they're one. Yeah, your svara is right. All the svaras in the Gemara are correct. Maybe there should be a ritzui. Yes, but if it's not mochichos, if it's really not evident as to what was happening, your korban pesach with an asham, even if the asham was shtei shanim and the pesach's one, you can't tell the difference. There's no way to know. Even if you're a baki atzim, there's no way to tell the difference. Next, question 5. Seir sheshachto l'shem asham lirtzi d'hait semer v'hai ser. They have different hair. One of them is wool, and one of them is regular hair. So why not? Why can't we say that there's ritzui? Says the Gemara, Amrei, the answer is that dichra ukmahu, that we're talking about a ram that has black fur. And what we wouldn't have known, and I didn't know this, is that goats back in the day were commonly black. So you're right that there's a difference between wool and non-wool. But when you're looking quickly, you can't tell. Both animals are the same color, and because the animals are the same color, there's no mochichos, nothing's clear. Next, egel upar. Let's say I take a calf or a cow. Sheshachtan l'shum pesach v'asham lirtu. It should work out fine because the korban pesach can't be done with a calf or with a cow. Wrong animal. And same with an asham. The egel upar, the pesach v'asham leka. These two animals, the calf and the cow, there's no shaychus to the world of pesach and asham. So we should have said that there's ritzui. And this the Gemara cannot wriggle out of. And the Gemara says in Nachanami, you're 100% right. And we found our one case so far, which is Egel Upar, that is brought for an Asham or a Pesach. There we see, like we started with, in the world of Menachos, we have an exception. That where Maisim are Mochichos, there's confusion, but there's Maisim that are Mochiach. I'm using the Machvas instead of the Maseches. Then we say that it's not puzzle. What about Zvachim? We found one case. This is one case so far where we would also apply it by Zvachim. Fine, says the Gemara, Umay Zvachim. Then what was the language of Zvachim in the Brisa? Rov Zvachim. Only most cases of Zvachim where we wouldn't say this, but we do have one, and maybe there are more. The Gemara doesn't present more. But our one case that we have that is reflective of the world of Menachos is this case of an Egel Upar that is being brought while the person screams out, Korban Pesach! Asham, and there's a 2,000-pound cow that he's been. No, that's not right. So that's not the right animal. Something's wrong here, but it's mochiach that it's not a korban pesach, and the animal would be kosher. Good. Now, yesterday, we're at the top of Gimel Amud Beis right now. We're going to go about 2/3, almost 3/4 of the way down. Yesterday, on the bottom of Beis Amud Beis, there was a stira that was brought in the Gemara halfway down on Beis Amud Beis of Rami the Reb Shimon ad Reb Shimon. There was a built-in stira, stira minei ubei between Reb Shimon. And the stira in Reb Shimon was about whether or not a mincha that was done shelo lishma would have been kosher for the owner. That was a discussion we had there. We gave one answer. I wasn't here. An answer was given yesterday on the bottom of Beis Amud Beis. Now we're going to learn answers 2 and 3, and then we will pause for the day. So says the Gemara, Rava Amar, that the stira within Reb Shimon about whether or not the Bailim will have a kosher animal, a kosher mincha, if they do the mincha shelo lishman, don't worry. Lo kasha. Rava Amar lo kasha. Kan v'kometz mincha l'shum mincha. One is where you do kmitza for one type of mincha compared to another. And kan v'kometz mincha l'shum zevach. And one is talking about where you do a kmitza for a mincha, that's flour, with kavana for shchita for an animal, which makes no sense. Let's go through both of them. Mincha l'shum mincha, Rashi points out, top of the page, dibra maschal mincha l'shem mincha, machvas l'shem marcheshes alu. Okay, so that's what he did. I have machvas, which is typically on a griddle, and I have kavana, mincha l'shem mincha, I have kavana that's going to be in a deeper pot. Okay, very good. So, why is it that we are lenient when it comes to mincha l'shum mincha? Why is it that we say that the bailam are good to go? Because the pasuk says, "V'zos Torah ha-mincha, Torah achas l'chol ha-menachos." Okay, yeah, you did it wrong. You did a machvas l'shem marcheshes, marcheshes l'shem machvas. Okay, but the Torah says that if, as long as your kavana was in the camp of a mincha, you're good to go, nothing to worry about. Mincha l'shum zevach, however, is a little bit different because the pasuk does not say v'zos Torah mincha v'zevach lo ksiv. The Torah doesn't have that word. The matir that we have to say that a mincha l'shem mincha still works is the pasuk says Torah achas l'chol menachos v'zos Torah mincha, but we don't have zos Torah mincha v'zevach, so that therefore we don't have a source lo ksiv. Ay v'hatana, but the problem is that we have a comment from Reb Shimon that said, "Mipnei shemaseh mochichin aleh kamar." Well, if you can tell, then you can tell. So why wouldn't we say that a mincha l'shem zebach isn't just a mincha? We should say that it's kosher. Everybody knows that flour is not meat. It's not the same thing. Says the Gemara, hachi kamar, and now we get into more sophisticated, complex Gemaras. This is really what's going on. Afal gav demachshava de lo min karahi v'tipasel. Even though the machshava is unrecognizable, and really it should be puzzle when you do a mincha l'shem zevach, it's still going to be kosher. Why? Because v'zos Torah mincha Torah achas l'chol menachos. That's how Reb Shimon would have to hold. Umay, if that's true, that we allow the zevach in such a case, my aval bizvachim eino kain, it must be that afal gab the shchita achas lekulan, even though all animals have the same shchita, but the pasuk says, what the pasuk doesn't say, v'zos Torah mincha v'zevach lo ksiv. So the flour is good, but the korban is not good. Elamayata, if in fact we have that pasuk to teach us v'zos Torah mincha that all menachos are kosher. So what about a case of a chatas that you bring for eating chelev, sheshachta l'shem chatas dam? I ate chelev. I brought a chatas because I ate chelev, but I did so with the kavana of l'shem chatas dam, or I did so with the kavana of l'shum chatas avodas kochavim, or l'shum chatas nazir, or l'shum chatas mitzora. Take share of a tirtzeh. We should say that if you have one chatas of chelev that you bring for eating, for doing a different crime, we should say it works. Damar Rachmana v'zos Torah sachatas, Torah achas l'chol achatos. Says the Gemara, very good. The Reb Shimon, hachanami. He agrees with that. Reb Shimon would be maskim to that if you bring one chatas, really you ate chelev, but you bring it with kavana for dam or for avodah zarah, whatever it is, the halacha is that it's kosher. But le rabbanan, they would not say that about the chatas. If you ate a chelev and you're bringing a chatas, and then you have kavana that it's l'shem chatas for dam, whatever the case may be, the rabbanan, Amar Rava, chatas cheleb, sheshachta l'shem chatas dam, l'shum chatas avodas kochavim is kshera, but the rest are not. L'shem chatas nazir, l'shem chatas mitzor psula, dahani olos bahadaihu ninhu. They agree with certain cases of chatas, but not all of them. Because when it comes to the chatas of a nazir or a mitzora, the kapara that's generated for them is not only generated from a chatas, there's another korban of an olah. So therefore, the Rabbanan are not willing to be so lenient. And then the Gemara says there's another way to understand the Shita of the Rabbanan. We're more than a third of the way down, almost halfway down on Gimel Amud Beis. Ravacha Berei de Rava Masni Le Lekulhu Lipsula. He actually teaches that the Rabbanan hold that all of them are puzzle. The Rabbanan just split the hairs. They said that if you ate chelev and you brought that chatas l'shem dam or l'shem avodas kochavim, that it was kosher. Ravacha Berei de Rava says no. Masni Le Lekulhu Lipsula. He holds that all of the cases of chatas, if you eat chelev and you bring it with the kavana for eating any other chelev, for eating any other, for doing any other aver for chatas, it does not count. Why? V'shachat osa lechatas, l'shem oso chatas, a drasha, almost a black on white drasha, hard to get away from. Hard to understand Reb Shimon now, because the way that the Rabbanan, according to Rav Acha Berei de Rava, understands the pasuk of Shachat Osa Lechatas, is that if I bring a chatas for a chelev and I change my kavana to dam or to avodas kochavim, nazir, mitzvah, whatever, and the Rabbanan say nothing doing, no way. It has to be Osa, it has to be exactly that thing. Good. Now let's see a third answer to the stira of Rav Acha of Reb Shimon. We pointed out again on the middle of Beis and Beis, the Gemara there said V'rami de Reb Shimon ad Reb Shimon, that there was a stira about whether or not it would be kosher for the bailim if you did a korban mincha shelo lishma. So the Gemara says halfway down on Gimel Amud Beis, just another 12 lines or so, says the Gemara, Rav Ashi Amar lo kasha. There is no stira in Reb Shimon. Kan bekomet machvas l'shum marcheshes. One is where you do kmitza of a machvas for the sake of a marcheshes. Again, that machvas is the griddle, and the marcheshes is a deeper pan. And kan bekomet minchas machvas l'shum minchas marcheshes. And there's a difference between these two. One is focusing only on the type of pan. That's the first one, the machvas versus the marcheshes. The second one is talking about the flour of the machvas and the flour of. So here's the distinction. Says the Gemara's felt. Machvas l'shum marcheshes b'mana kachashi. According to the first approach, where we would say that the bailim are good to go, that's because the only thing that's different about the flour is what pan it's in. And listen to this line, umachshava b'mana lo pasla. We're not worried about the machshavas you have about different pans. I'm not worried about that. If all that you made a mistake about was which pan you're using, the griddle or the deeper pan, you're good. No problem. The bailim are fine. But the other side of Reb Shimon from the middle of Beis and Mid-Beis would be this. But minchas machvas, mishum, lishum, minchas marcheshes, that's b'mincha de pasta b'machshava k'macha ashev. If you're saying that the flour of the machvas was in your mind, and you said out loud actually, for the flour of the marcha, that's different. Those are different korbanos mincha. And if you articulate that way about the mincha, not about the pan, but at the flour specifically for that, you are done for. And v'hatana, wait 1 second. We said, mipnei shema'aseh mochichen aleh ka'amar. I know what I'm doing. I'm looking at the pan that I'm using. So maybe I should say, it's clear I used a machvas, so it's a machvas or not. My actions should be determining. So why would you say that it's still aser? Says the Gemara, hachi kamar. Afal gav the machshava min karhi. Even though it's readily evident as to what I'm doing, tipasel, it's still going to be puzzle. That is the understanding of that second approach in order to understand Reb Shimon. If that's true, umay aval bezvachim eino kain. How then does he understand the part of the brisa from the middle of Beis and Mid-Beis that says bezvachim eino kain? Because it's only talking about korbanos mincha here. Says Gemara, afal gad shchita achas lekulan. Even though all animals have the same type of shchita, and zrika achas lekulan, and kabbalah achas lekulan, and all of the steps of korbanos are very, very similar in the world of zvachim. Bezvicha de pasla be machshava ka mechashev. What we are talking about with a korban is when you're postling with your machshava. This we know about. Hey, you got a pigol, all of these mindsets of pigol. So therefore, while by mincha there may be chakiras to have lakanu lakan. If we're only talking about the kalim, we can be mekil. If we're talking about the flour, we can't be mekil. But by animals, we always know that machshava could be a problem. We're going to stop right here, 2/3 of the way down at Amar le Ravacha Bre de Rava, and Mir Tashem will pick up tomorrow night with a big chunk of Gemara. Wishing you all a beautiful night.